Hi there and a very warm welcome. My name is Dave Litton from the Projex Academy and this is our brand new PMP Scrum Practice Guide. Now, we've called it a special edition for reasons which I will explain shortly. You see, the PMP exam, in terms of its syllabus, is changing. Originally planned to happen at the end of 2019, the new syllabus will now be introduced around June 2020. And it's because of those changes that I have created the PMP Scrum Practice Guide. As I will explain to you, apart from changes to the structure of the PMP exam syllabus, there's also a large shift towards Agile approaches, of which Scrum is probably the most popular. And the reason I've called this PMP Scrum is because this gives the focus on the depth and breadth of the Scrum syllabus as it relates to the upcoming PMP Exam Changes in 2020. So let me just spend the first couple of slides bringing you up to speed on that. Okay, so this refers to the Project Management Institute, PMI, the PMP exam itself, and the move towards Agile and Scrum approaches. Now, the current exam syllabus, as you will know, also contains many references to Agile approaches. But back in June 2019, PMI announced this significant change, as I've said, to the Project Management Professional Certification exam. And because of this, the PMP certification will, by mid-June 2020, be reflective of these changes and will incorporate new approaches across the whole value delivery spectrum. So what was the drivers to these changes? Well, as it does quite regularly, PMI conducted research through what they call job task analysis, with the focus on the role of the project manager. And this job task analysis validated that today's project management practitioners work in a variety of project environments and they utilize different project approaches, hence the emphasis on Agile. So what you'll find is about half of the examination will, by mid of 2020, will represent predictive project management. That's your traditional waterfall approach, if you will, and the other 50% will represent Agile or hybrid Agile approaches. And it's with that in mind that Projex Academy wants to help you get ahead of the curve, ready for mid-2020, so that predictive, Agile and hybrid approaches will be found throughout 3 new domain areas, and these approaches will not be isolated to any specific domain or task. Put another way, out of your 200 questions within the PMP exam, 100 of them will be based on Agile or hybrid approaches. But it gets more interesting than that. Now, a little while ago, the Project Management Institute, PMI, recently announced that they had purchased Disciplined Agile, and although at time of recording it's not fully known exactly how much of Disciplined Agile will be embedded within the PMP exam, you can bet that it will be considerable. So let me use the next slide to bring all these strands together for you before we start in earnest in looking at PMP Scrum. Right now, our current PMP Masterclass is the perfect solution for you if you're preparing for your PMP exam. But of course, by the middle of 2020, we'll need to augment that and update it to reflect the new syllabus. And to that end, we will be creating an additional set of videos and handbooks, which, as you can see, I've called here PMP 2020 Guide to Processes, People and the Business Environment. These are the new 3 sections of the PMP exam syllabus. So rest assured, anyone who invests in our current PMP Masterclass will get this free upgrade, although I'm sure most of you will want to become PMP before the new exam comes into being. So with that in mind, our PMP Scrum Practice Guide is our new masterclass consisting of a handbook and 20 video set, that's exactly what you're watching now, in the form of 20 modules. This, of course, being the Scrum Overview that you're currently watching. But Projex Academy has more to offer you. Coming very shortly will be our PMP Agile Practice Guide, which takes the new 2020 syllabus and gives you everything you need to know about Agile, in addition, of course, to this current one, which is PMP Scrum. Because of the takeover of Disciplined Agile by PMI, here at Projex Academy, we are also releasing a PMP Disciplined Agile Practice Guide. Yet again, all of these practice guides will be handbooks supported by our usual streaming high-definition online videos. So this slide puts in perspective what you've currently invested in, PMP Scrum, what's coming down the road, our PMP Agile and Disciplined Agile, and the changes that we'll be adding to our current PMP Masterclass. So if you are considering or have already invested in PMP 20 Masterclass, you will get our PMP 2020 guide as a free upgrade. And for those of you who are serious about passing, keep an eye on our website www.projex.com for announcement as we release our new PMP Agile and PMP Disciplined Agile Masterclasses. Very good. Right, let's now roll up our sleeves and give you, first of all, as I've called it, a fairly gentle Scrum overview. For the purposes of this training, I will start at ground zero and assume you know little about Scrum itself. So let's roll our sleeves up and make a start. Okay, so what is Scrum? Well, it's an agile framework and it's designed specifically for organizing and managing work, and therefore for developing innovative products and services. Let's make that clear from the outset. Whatever organization you work for and whatever types of projects that you are involved with, some may be producing new products or updated products from your organization, while other projects might be there to put in place and deliver new or upgraded services. For all of those, Scrum is an agile framework that is very suitable. And Scrum already has been around for quite a few years and has an impressive track record. Indeed, just to give you a few off the cuff, Scrum has been used to research and identify viable markets, helping to do the same for new and emerging technologies, and to enhance or improve product capabilities. It's been used to develop and enhance current products and services, or indeed to sustain and renew existing products. It's been used as a framework to release products and or their enhancements, and is done as frequently as many times per day. With the emergence of the cloud, Scrum projects have been used to develop and sustain all aspects of the cloud technology, online, secure, on-demand, as well as delivering updated and new operational environments for product use. As you'll be aware, project work is the other side of the coin to operational work. And as you can see here, Scrum has been used very successfully for delivering projects. It's also been used to enhance and update operational areas within organizations. It's been used to develop software, which is where Scrum originally started from, but these days also hardware as well as embedded software. Scrum has been used as a vehicle, as a framework for delivering networks of interacting functions, autonomous vehicles, and industries as diverse as government and schools, and for managing the operation of organisation, just about everything we use in our daily lives as individuals and societies. And as technology, market and environmental complexities and their interactions have rapidly increased over the past decade, Scrum's utility in dealing with complexity and delivering solutions is proven every single day. So the purpose of this slide is to let you know that Scrum isn't just the new kid on the block, it's already got an impressive track record. And Scrum, as I've said, is different to existing predictive methodologies such as waterfall. You see, Scrum has proved especially effective in iterative and incremental knowledge transfer. Don't worry, I shall be explaining exactly what we mean by iterative incremental in the coming slides and modules. And Scrum is now widely used for products, services, and more to help manage your organization itself, rather than just change-related projects. So a couple of slides on the Scrum overview. Now, Scrum, as I've said, is a framework within which people can address complex, adaptive problems. Keyword adaptive, while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. Scrum is at once lightweight and simple to understand, although it can be difficult to master. I don't mean just for the individual, but rather for the organisation to embed and use successfully. Hence the need for our PMP Scrum Practice Guide. You'll learn that the Scrum framework is based on a set of values, principles if you will, and practices that I shall be explaining shortly. You see, Scrum is not a process. It's not a technique, and it's certainly not a definitive method, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 and so on. It should be correctly called a framework, and within this framework you'll have various processes and techniques, and something called artifacts, which I'll be introducing you to shortly. Scrum makes clear the relative efficacy of your product management and work techniques so that you can continuously improve the product, the team, and your entire working environment. And Scrum is radically different from traditional predictive methods because it's based on empirical process control theory. And what this means is that the knowledge comes from experience and you make decisions based on what is known. And this occurs because Scrum uses an iterative and incremental approach. Those are two different things which I shall explain, to optimize predictability and to control risk. So what's the difference between iterative and incremental? Let me give you a first initial definition. You see, iterative development assumes we will probably get things wrong before we get them right. Put another way, we will do things poorly, or at least not optimally, before we get to do them well. This is true of just about every human endeavour, and it's only over the past 50 years or so projects have been almost shoehorned into using predictive approaches. You know, the sort of thing where you have to get the entire requirements fully understood in full detail, then you plan in glorious detail going out over a year or more, and then you design and develop. And of course, we all know that getting it perfectly right to start with isn't the way it is in nature. It's part of the human condition. You speak to any artist, such as a sculptor or a painter, you'll know that they have a picture in their mind of what they want to achieve, but to start with, they use a very broad outline and will often overpaint original ideas as they develop the full picture. So that's iterative development. What's incremental? Well, incremental development is where we take the whole product, here I'm using the product meaning the end result of your project, into smaller pieces. Build some of it now, learn from that, how we did it and what we did, and adapt that and then build some more of it. So pull those two together, iterative development and incremental development, you've got the very beating heart of what Scrum is. So here's a quick little snapshot showing that in practice. We first of all start off analysing what needs to be done. You might call this capturing requirements. You then do your design, you then build it, and then you integrate, which is pulling all of the pieces together, testing at every single step, if you will. You then need to adapt to what you found based on real-time feedback and then plan what is known as the next sprint. For the purpose of this simplistic diagram, to see a sprint as one cycle, and we continue it for each and every sprint. So Scrum is run on what's known as time boxes. These are time-bound time frames, if you will. And these time boxes are no more than 1 month in duration, typically less. 1 week to 1 calendar month is typical. And in these consistent duration time boxes, we have what's known as sprints, where at the end of a sprint, a potentially, I'll come back to that word later, releasable increment of product is produced. And we'll see that the Scrum team itself consists of 3 basic roles: the product owner, the development team themselves, and the Scrum Master, all of which I'll go into detail shortly. So before we go any further, what have you learned? Scrum has got a set of time boxes, which we call sprints, and within that you get these increments of products to be produced. How are they produced? Going back to the previous slide, by using iterative development along with incremental development. So let me talk just briefly about what these roles are. Don't worry, I shall be going into them in far more detail in the coming modules. Let's start off then first with the product owner. This individual is responsible for maximizing the value of the product, and he or she is the single authority that is responsible for deciding which features and which functionality to build in total and to build to start off with, and the order in which to build them. You'll learn shortly about something called the product backlog, which is a set of requirements, if you will, ruthlessly ordered by priority. And you'll see how this plays perfectly into Scrum's remit of delivering early value. The other role, consisting of a team of individuals, no more than 9 typically, is called the development team. And this is a cross-functional, self-organising team consisting of team members who have everything they need within the team to deliver working product without depending on others outside the team. In other words, this is a self-empowered cross-functional team, and it is they who develop the products from the prioritised backlog that the product owner has created. And I'll go into detail exactly how these roles work within each sprint and across each increment. We also have the Scrum Master, and this individual is responsible for ensuring that the Scrum process is upheld and works constantly to ensure the Scrum team adheres to the practices and rules, as well, of course, as the Scrum Master acts as a coach to the team on helping to remove what Scrum calls impediments, problems if you will. They could be risks or issues. The Scrum Master also protects the team from outside interference, but it's important you understand that both the product owner and the Scrum Master must act as a leader, not as a manager. Now, if you currently are a project manager, don't be concerned about this, as I will, as these modules progress, talk about the role of the project manager in relationship to the product owner and the Scrum Master. So let me give the first of many simple snapshots of what the Scrum framework looks like. Again, I only want to skim over the top here. Here's a graphic showing the product backlog. It's just a set of features, as I've said, or requirements, ruthlessly prioritised. So the most important and the ones that must be delivered early sit at the top of the pile, if you will, and they're gradually skimmed off this and worked on during each sprint. So let's suppose the backlog consists of, what should we say, 50 features. What you'd want to decide not only which are the most important and highest priority ones to deliver first, and these form the initial sprint backlog. See a sprint backlog as a subset of the product backlog. Now, as shown by this green arrow here, what happens is something called sprint planning, where the team agrees with all of the individuals involved about which of these features should be done first, and what activities will need to take place, and what therefore work effort needs to create those first all-important products. Then the sprint itself starts. As I've said, it's normally between 1 week and 1 calendar month in length at maximum. And every single day there's something called a daily stand-up. So called because it shouldn't take any more than about 15 minutes, where each individual in the team, in turn, says what they've created already, what they intend to do today, and what impediments or problems that they need to resolve. Then the work on creating the products continues with the daily stand-up happening, as you'd imagine, every day, ultimately leading to the end deliverable. Whatever that might be, it will be a potentially shippable product, and this product will form a part of the total deliverable of the project itself. Indeed, right now, the early features may be the only ones that we've got details on. As we go further down these features, they may be quite large and quite indistinct, so that further work will need to be done to understand exactly what the products are within them. So there's a very quick snapshot and overview of Scrum itself. And in the next module, I'll again go over a fairly high-level view of this to fill in a few extra details for you. So let me just finish this first overview with what I've called Scrum in a nutshell. Well, as you'll learn, there are 3+2 roles. You've learnt briefly that one is called the Scrum Master, another role called the Product Owner, and by the way, the Product Owner is typically full-time involved within the Scrum project itself, whereas the Scrum Master may be involved in other projects as well. Then you have the development team, a cross-functional, diverse, self-empowered team with all of the skills and capacity to develop the products within this particular Scrum project. There are also 2 other general roles, if you will, and that's your all-important stakeholders, consisting usually of customers and users, and indeed anyone with an interest in the outcome of the Scrum project. There is one role which I'll mention for the first and last time here. It's called a Scrum Mentor role, and I only mention it because you may come across it, and I shan't be discussing that again in the rest of this training. Really, a Scrum Mentor might be someone very experienced with Scrum that can help both the Scrum Master and the team themselves. There's also then, to summarise, 5 what we call events. There's the sprint itself, which I've briefly discussed. There's the daily Scrum, or the stand-up meeting if you will, between all of the roles involved. You have something called sprint planning, which I've yet to give you any details on, which happens before each sprint starts. During each sprint, you'll have something called a sprint review, where among other things, early versions of the product will be demonstrated. And then you have something called the sprint retrospective, which rather than reviewing the products, reviews the processes used within the sprint to optimize them, improve them for the upcoming sprints. And then, of course, at a high level, you have something called project planning. Now, I will introduce you in the next modules what is generally known as extended Scrum. So just hold that thought for the moment and think of the more practical aspects, since Scrum will be run within an organization where Scrum is there to provide business benefits. That's where project planning levels come into it. And as part of that, looking at an ever-changing but high-level view of the release of the products, even though we may not know all the details yet, and some of these milestones or timelines, if you will, are initial estimates and will evolve and mature as the various sprints and increments proceed. And finally, there's something which Scrum calls artifacts. Now, there's 3 plus 3 here. First of all, there's the product backlog, which I've briefly introduced you to. There's something called the sprint backlog, which is a subset of these features, all highly prioritized, of course. And there's something called increments, which I've talked about. Now, just for now, just see an increment as typically containing several sprints, although you could have an increment where it contains one sprint. An increment, therefore, contains a potentially shippable increment of the entire project product. So this separate little section down here is talking about what is known as extended Scrum. There's something called a vision or a vision statement, which is a high-level view of the ultimate outcome of the project, and something aligned to that and from the vision called a product roadmap. The product roadmap feeds nicely into project planning and release planning, as you'll learn. However, be quite clear, these are part of what is known as extended Scrum and not pure Scrum, if you will. But I have included these so that you have a full education and full preparation for whatever your PMP exam throws at you with regard to Scrum. One more, of course, coming from release planning is the release plan itself. Very good. So there's a nice broad brush top level overview of not just the future of PMP, but a first preparation for you of general Scrum aspects ready for your PMP exam. So thanks for your time, thanks for your attention. From me, Dave, it's bye for now, and let's meet up again in Module 2, where you and I will be covering Scrum Essentials.